I have not seen this many dicks at the movie theater since I went to go see Jackass Forever.
Swing, swing.
So, I want to start off by saying welcome back to the channel, and if you're new here, welcome. If you're a fanatic of everything entertainment, this is the channel for you, but in today's movie review, we'll be talking about 28 years later, so let's get into it. Now, this movie's been pretty divisive. I think it's like the last Jedi of horror films, especially as of recent. So, with that said, is 28 years later worth the wait? Find out. So, with that, let's move on to the good. First thing I want to bring up, it's not the movie itself, but the trailer. The trailer was amazing. So much so that it had me hyped and I was like itching for the day that this movie would come out. And I think it even won a trailer award, which is crazy to think about, but it makes sense. Like it gave nothing away and it had you questioning what's going to happen in this movie. So getting that out of the way, I love the trailer. That's why everyone's been like excited for this because the trailer was amazing. And the acting all across the board is fantastic. You had Aaron Taylor Johnson, Jodie Comer, Ralph Fiennes, and someone I'm now familiar with, Alfie Williams. They are great across the board. The only thing I'm not a fan of is two of those actors that I mentioned don't have that much screen time, that being Aaron Taylor Johnson and Ralph Fiennes. I really love Ralph Fiennes' character in here because he's like built up as this like witch doctor of sorts, and like nobody wants to like associate themselves with him, but he turns out to be like a really good guy. Then Alfie Williams, he carries this movie. I'm not big on child actors, but this kid really sells it, and he has like this movie on his shoulders, and he does phenomenally. And then we have Jodie Comer, which I've known her from Free Guy, and then last year's The Bike Riders, which I thought she did great in those movies, and she does great in this movie as well. And then Aaron Taylor Johnson plays the dad, and he has some of the best scenes, especially in the first act of this movie. Which another thing that you have to bring up when talking about this movie is the cinematography, regardless if it's the landscape shots or the cameras that they shot this on. And a majority of this movie was shot on an iPhone 15 Pro Max, which is the phone that I have. And it like inspires me to go out and shoot more short films or like a feature film one day, hopefully, because I'm hoping here soon, within the next weekend or two, I'm probably gonna start on my next short film, so I can't wait for that. But it's really inspiring, but you can tell at the movie theaters that this was shot on a phone, because some things do look a bit fuzzy, but it's not as egregious as like 28 Days Later with the DV cameras. Then we have great sequences throughout, especially like in the first act of this movie. But I will say the alpha scenes in here are pretty intense, alongside the regular rage filled zombies. But the alpha in here, Samson, all I gotta say is whoever his wife is in real life, she's got to be happy. Can't relate. The causeway chase scene, going back to the island, one of the best scenes in this movie, regardless of the intensity or not, but the cinematography of it is beautiful as well. And then another scene I have to bring up, which is one of my favorites and is going to have like a lot of people mixed on it, that being the train scene. Holy shit, dude. I did not expect to see that in this movie, and it might like turn some people off to this movie and be like, "No, I don't want to watch this no more." But when that happened, I was like, "What the fuck, dude?" I'm not gonna get into it, but if you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. And the practical effects, this is probably the best that any of the practical effects have ever looked in this franchise thus far. I'm hoping to see what they do in Bone Temple, but this, oh my god, some of the shit that they do in here, like the gore in here and the Mortal Kombat finisher slash like Predator reference is fucking insane. The way that this alpha zombie like takes out his enemies. Like the train sequence when he takes off this one dude's head has to be like my favorite part of him like doing his finisher move. And I love the imagery of the Bone Temple in here, and I can't wait to see it even further in the next film. But I'm not going to get any more into it because you guys need to see what like all that is. It's crazy. I love the way it looks. And there's a really emotional scene towards the end that has to do with two characters, one of them being very sick, and then gives a lot of context to this poster right here. Makes it even more sad. Like I wish like I saw the poster of that, I'm like, that looks really cool. And then you see like it in context and you're like, did not expect that out of this movie. I mean, given the first two films do have like emotional scenes in them, but damn, didn't expect that out of this movie. Almost brought a tear to my eye. Like if I brought a certain family member with me to see this, then yeah, I probably would cry. And then the last thing I want to bring up in the positives is Spike's character arc in here. He comes off at the beginning as this very like fear-ridden, very fearful character that goes out into this mainland, and is just frightened throughout. I'm not saying he's a coward because he's not. He's just way too young to go out to the mainland to experience these things. And at the end, he's like his character arc is strong. He becomes strong. He becomes one with nature, I guess you could say. Like so good, so good. And with that, on to the mixed. I will say the stylized editing in the first 30 to 40 minutes of this film was very jarring at first, but I came to like enjoy it because it gave this film like some sort of like identity, and I was a really big fan of that. And then like they get rid of it like halfway through the movie, except for one particular scene where has like one of the best deaths in this movie when it has to do on the train scene. That's all I got to say about that. But like some of the stylized editing was jarring at first, but I was like I accepted it. I'm like this gives this movie some type of identity, and I was a really big fan of it. Just not at first, but it grew on me. But then I was like pissed off that they got rid of it because I'm like as soon as I got used to it too. Come on, dude. And this film doesn't really know what it is for like half the movie. There's like a very uh bad tonal imbalance throughout, where like the first act feels like this action adventure film between father and son. The second act is like a journey going to find a certain other character with our main lead and his mother, and then the third act is like the main lead um, getting to know what death is and respecting it, and really emotional. But like I felt like there was two or three different scripts written and they just like mishmashed it all together, and I'm like come on dude. And there's like some and then there's like this comic relief character that shows up in the middle of it, and I'm like doesn't really suit this film except for like one or two jokes that Spike says. I thought that was pretty funny, but other than that it didn't feel like the film needed that, but it has it regardless. And the last thing I'm mixed on is the infected in here. We have the alpha and the regular rage filled infected, which I'm a fan of those. But there's one in here, the crawlers or the solos or whatever they called them, I forgot what it was, that like I was anticipating seeing in the trailer. And then when we saw what they were, I'm like, really? That's it? That's why it's in the mix because I'm a fan of the alpha. I'm a fan of like the regular rage filled infected, but yeah, the crawlers were just a big letdown to me. Like when I saw like their backs in the trailer, I was like, holy shit, this thing's gonna be like fucking huge or like menacing. Nope. And with that, on to the bad. The intro scene in here feels like it's trying to like one up the first two films, where the first film is like these activists releasing these chimpanzees filled with the virus. Second film is the farmhouse scene, and then this film takes place with children and at a church, which I thought was going to tie into 28 Days Later, and I thought it was like the same church as that, but it's not, unfortunately. But I don't know. I just feel like it was way too over the top. And if you want a very suspenseful and intense first scene killing children, take notes of Terrifier 3 because when I first saw that, I was like, holy shit, they're going there. This film just felt like it was like I don't know, man. It just felt like it was trying to one up itself with no real substance to it, even though it does tie into the ending. And with that said, the last thing I want to bring up with the negatives is the ending. That last 2 or 3 minutes, what the fuck was that, dude? That was. I know I brought up the tonal imbalance, but this was like beyond left field. I'm not saying it didn't have anything to do with the rest of the film, but it didn't feel like the rest of the film. And I'm like, what I was watching, I could not believe. I just started laughing at the theater because there was like three other people behind me, like 6, 7 rows back. So they might have heard me, but I heard them laughing too. So like, what was that? Okay, like it has me intrigued to see what's coming next, but I'm also like, why? And it brings back one of my favorite actors from Sinners. And then when I seen him on screen, I'm like, they're going for that? Like it just felt very. I'm not going to get further into it because I don't want to spoil it because I feel like I've already touched upon certain things, but I don't want to go any further. But either way, I will say I do enjoy this movie a lot more than most people do because it is pretty divisive. But I will say it's not entirely worth the wait. But I am intrigued to see what's next, and I can't wait for Killian Murphy to return because he doesn't show up in this movie. But with that being said, I'm going to be giving this year's 28 Years Later an overall grade of a 77%. Let me know in the comments below what you think about this movie because it is pretty divisive, but I want to know your opinion. But I don't think it's the movie, not saying that we as fans deserve, but it's just not the one that we expected. So, could be a good thing, could be a bad thing, but as always, I just want to say thank you as always for watching my videos and hope to see you in the next one.